sometimes, if it's bad, you get beat up, but more commonly, you get pulled out of cars if you're a 16, 17-year-old, and you're told to sit there until sundown, and then they put you and send you home. But they just is shutting everything down, right? And everybody's under suspicion, so it's a kind, according to like Human Rights Watch, a kind of collective punishment. They've dug trenches everywhere so that you're forced onto the roads with checkpoints. You cannot get around through the back ways. Trenches, boulders, piles of rubble. And now, another form of structural violence, the building of the wall. A security wall for Israelis who want to do something about suicide bombing and any kind of infiltration. But it was not built on the Green Line, the old border. It was built inside the Green Line. So Palestinians and the international community protested that this was not only cutting off people, especially in areas, let me get this, right, where it's in here where it cuts in around Kalkilia, and up here around villages like Kufin, where they lost a lot of their land, and some people are caught on the wrong side of the wall, and that's a big problem, and especially since as you get closer to Israel, it's better agricultural land. Yeah.
What is your opinion of President Carter's book, where he actually used the word apartheid about this? got quite a lot of defining people.
Yeah. I think the word apartheid, I think we could draw differences between South Africa and Palestine. But I think it's a reasonable word to use. It's an enforced, apartheid means living apart, and it's racially organized in South Africa. And here, it's organized very much on that. If you're a Jew, you have rights. I, as a Jew, could go, I was an American, but I could go anywhere, right? And Israeli soldiers would let me do anything. But if you're a Palestinian American, right, or a Palestinian who was born there and whose grandparents were born there, you don't have the rights of movement. You don't have, there's a pass system like South Africa, where you need a pass to move out of your village or out of your town if you're a West Bank Palestinian. So that's very similar to the apartheid structure.
But as part of it, the apartheid structure in Africa is racial. But could one argue the apartheid structure that you're talking about is political in that, and I'm very naive here, I'll ask you a very naive question. What would happen if the Palestinians renounced violence and recognized the legitimacy of the state of Israel? Wouldn't that help?
I think that, the same questions were asked of the ANC,
Yes.
right? It's exactly asked of the ANC. And the answer from the ANC was, if we renounce violence, what do we have to bargain with? Right? What are you going to do? What are you going to do in exchange? Right? And the idea of Oslo, the African National Congress, Nelson Mandela's party. Thank you. Nelson Mandela, they were engaged in a armed resistance against apartheid. And when both de Klerk came out and said, you're no longer illegal, we'll start negotiations, that was a renouncing, and they said, okay, we'll stop violence. And that's what the PLO did in Oslo. But it didn't last, because nothing was given back, right? Or they were supposed to get something from it, but the situation got worse. So the peace happened in '94, and we all thought it was going to go somewhere, right? Not everybody was peaceful, just like in South Africa. Some parties didn't agree with ANC, and they continued it. But it went forward, right? And by '94, you had an election in South Africa. But Oslo never materialized in a way, and life got worse in some ways instead of getting better. Okay.
What's your theory of all the conflict in this?
Okay, let me go forward, and we can keep taking, I've been taking questions all along.
What has any questions reserved right now? It's about to end in about 6-7 minutes, and then we're going to get to Q&A.
Okay, so Gaza, I only have a couple more slides there. It will end. Gaza, I'll take you through this quickly. Israel had a small number of settlers in Gaza, not like the West Bank, where there are 400,000 settlers. It had 4 digits. I forget exactly the number. It was a thousands number, like 3,000, 4,000. It's 4 digits. In Gaza, they were completely a security liability for Israel. Israel pulled them out of Gaza in 2005. They resisted symbolically. That's them being pulled out, Israeli withdrawal. In 2006, there was Hamas made an attack on Israelis at the border and captured a soldier, and Israel opened up big time in an attack on the population of Gaza in 2006, killed 240, and destroyed the infrastructure in 2006 for the first time. The waterworks, the sanitation, the electricity, everything sort of came to a serious halt. It became a humanitarian crisis in 2006. In 2007, the elected, the Fatah militia threw out the Hamas militia, who their party had won the parliament elections, threw out Fatah, took control of Gaza. That's Hamas sitting in the Palestinian president's office. It's kind of a joke photo. He's sitting there with his mask on, with his legs crossed, talking on the phone like he's the new president. And in 2008, this last year, the attacks on Gaza in response to rocket attacks on Sderot and numerous rocket attacks, this massive attack that killed 1,380 people, 430 children, and redestroyed the civilian infrastructure that had been partially rebuilt in the 2 years since 2006. So, electricity, water, sanitation, all those things, and not to mention police stations, political offices, the parliament, all those things destroyed. It's rubble, okay? It's rubble. Agriculture, it's rubble. It's everywhere you look in Gaza. Okay. Palestinians are divided right now between these two parties. Hamas controls Gaza. They recognize President Abdulaziz Douak as the president because they say that President Mahmoud Abbas from Fatah should have held elections 2 years ago. He didn't hold them, so he is no longer legitimate president. And the Hamas Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh, he was elected, so he's the elected prime minister from Hamas, and they have the, not elected, but the recognized president from Hamas in Gaza. And the Fatah controls the West Bank, and they have the elected President Mahmoud Abbas and the Prime Minister Salam Fayyad, which is a sort of parliamentary decision, not the elected Prime Minister. The politics are divided. Palestinian politics are severely divided. Okay? Israeli politics, this is the results of the last election. Bibi Netanyahu from Likud, as you know, is the new Prime Minister in a coalition with Avigdor Lieberman, who's from the Yisrael Beitenu, which means Israel's our home, is our house, right? Which is a more right-wing movement. And the left-wingers from the Labour Party, Livni and Barak, are out, right? Or Kadima and Labour Party are out. So this shows you that in both cases, I was going to talk more about politics, but both of those slides, Palestinian-Israeli, let me just make the one point. Both sides, because of this conflict, have voted increasingly for a more right-wing, a more militant politics. It's driven both sides to a more polarized position. Okay? One state or two state solution. These are like these are some of my final slides. So what are we going to do here? What's the solution? For years, the point has been one state or two. These slides, I show you again some of the maps I showed earlier of how, Jewish settlement in 1947, the Jewish state, Israel, 1947 after the partition, or the partition, then after the war, and then today, what areas are controlled by Palestinians? It's fragmented. So, I'll answer this question in two ways, a kind of an undecided answer. Palestinians and Israelis are not ready to be in a state together, okay? There's a lot of reasons for that the Palestinians want their own independent state. Functionally, that's kind of impossible. There's too much facts on the ground. I said ethnic cleansing of Palestinians to remove them is not a possibility. And you could say pulling 400,000 Israelis out of the West Bank is a possibility, more than 4 million Palestinians. But it's not an easy possibility. And economically speaking, remember, the whole place is the size of Jersey. So, I could get into the details, but economically speaking, territorially speaking, the way the phone networks and the electrical grids and the roads have been built into the ground for years, one state is like about all that can happen. And in some ways, I was a two-stater for a long time, but I don't see that as, we've gone past that. And it's really the right wing of Israel that's built so many settlements that's made that an impossibility anymore. right? So it's like the right wing of Israel.